I spent the past few nights making a spooky Halloween-themed Starting Soon screen for my Twitch stream. Twitch.tv/OracleFishLive, by the way. And honestly, I'm pretty happy with it for the amount of time I had to work on it. It's cute, it loops seamlessly, and it looks something like this. And I recorded the entire process, so this video is about 7 hours of work condensed all the way down to just 10 minutes. And I've narrated the entire thing to give you some insight into my workflow. Hopefully you can learn a thing or two along the way. So let's get started. My name is Chris Folea, I'm your stream scholar. Welcome to Stream School. So I like to make all of my Starting Soon screens look like cheap budget cardboard cutout productions with my mascot because it's cute, but it's also relatively easy to throw together in a short amount of time. It also matches my aesthetic of sort of calculated disaster. So here I took my Christmas Starting Soon screen, deleted everything except the stage and my mascot, then I put him in sort of like a zombie walk pose because I knew I wanted to do a zombie walk animation of some sort. Then I opened Illustrator to make some cardboard cutout stage props, but I realized I didn't really want to do textures or UV maps, so I decided to do everything for this one in Blender using Blender's Bezier curves to sort of speed up the process. So I did sort of like an extruded white outline and then multiple layers of color using Bezier curves to get sort of like a cute illustrated style. So it looks like a crappy cardboard cutout production, but it looks like it's on purpose, like it's cute and illustrated. If I had just done like solid gray or solid colored cutouts in the backdrop, it would have looked crappy because it actually looks crappy rather than adorable and illustrated. I made 3 of these tombstones in their own collection so I could instance them across the stage later for some nice variety. And then I started working on the backdrop. I added a moon, and then I changed the curtain color to make sort of like a cool purple Halloween sky. Messed with the moon some and the lighting. I wanted the moon to maybe cast some light on the stage. And I kept looking at my Christmas Starting Soon screen for reference since I haven't made one of these in a while, but I ended up making some rolling hills in the backdrop where I could put tombstones, like an expansive cemetery, but made out of cardboard cutouts in the backdrop for a stage production, of course. Started sprinkling tombstones across that and just adding detail to the scene in general and making it look nice and getting everything nice and lined up. Then I made the lighting a bit more spooky and Halloween themed and added some detail to the foreground here just to add some depth to the production and make it look a bit more detailed. Then I sprinkled some more tombstones around the scene. At this point, I didn't really know entirely what I was going for here, so I just sort of threw stuff together until it looked like a nice composition. At this point, I thought he was probably just going to be walking through the scene. I wanted to make the background a bit more detailed, so I started making a path to go up the background a little bit through our cemetery. And I spent a while on the shapes here, just trying to make them look correct, and then the software crashed. So I had to redo that, spent a good amount of time making the paths look exactly the way I wanted them to, and just started moving stuff around and tweaking and everything. At this point, I wanted to add grass detail to the background, but couldn't make it work, so I opted to instead just use some extra Bezier shapes to add some rim lighting to my cardboard cutout hills here. So it looks like the moon is maybe casting some light. And at this point, I wanted some Starting Soon text on my Starting Soon animation, but this was a big mistake. I wanted to take the Starting Soon text and make each letter a tombstone in the graveyard, and maybe as he's zombie walking, have the Starting Soon text scroll throughout the scene. And I tried for so long to make this look nice, and I should have just cut my losses way earlier on. I tried messing with their sizes, with their depth, with their shapes, with their color. I just could not make something that looked good here. I just did not like how it was looking. And it was covering up too much of the cool backdrop that I spent a bunch of time on too. So I ended up scrapping that completely. And the new idea I had was have him zombie walk on screen, maybe have some props scroll past him, and then have him fall into an open grave. So for this, I made a pile of dirt cardboard cutout with the same process as all of the other cardboard cutouts. And I put that in front of the grave, then him on another layer, and then the grave behind that, so it could look like he fell into an open grave when he tripped into it. Spent a lot of time making the dirt look nice with lots of little illustrated details on it, just so it looks nice and cartoony and cheerful. And here, the plan was still to have elements scroll throughout the screen. So I added another gravestone there. I quickly realized I wanted to use the Yeet tombstone for the one that he fell into. Here, I took the fence from one of the Halloween stinger transitions I made this year and tried to incorporate it in the scene for extra detail, but it just didn't fit the cartoony aesthetic, so I ditched that pretty quickly. And at this point, I decided I was going to start animating the character, and character animation is a very complicated discipline that takes years and years to learn and even more years to master, so I wouldn't recommend doing character animation on your own stuff unless you already know how to animate characters relatively well. I'm all right at it, enough to do walk cycles, so for this I wanted to do like a cartoony zombie walk cycle. I wanted it to be really derpy and silly, so I just wanted like the typical waddle rather than like a realistic one where you might be limping or something, because I want this to be entertaining and cute, not necessarily like dark and dreary. And at this point, I realized I didn't want him to walk onto the screen. I wanted him to climb out of a grave. So I moved the grave over and I put a trap door there, which was gonna be visible for part of the whole like bad stage production look, but I never got around to using that. Anyway, I decided to have him like crawl out of the tombstone, and I spent a really long time just trying to get these poses to look right, but he's really bulky and awkward for that specific motion. Crawling out of a grave is really mechanically complicated for character animation, way too much so to get done in one night especially. And he doesn't have wrists to help pull him up or anything, so it just ended up being way too much to try to get that to look good in one night, so I ended up having to ditch it. If I had more time, I would have loved to have him crawl out of the grave, but at the end of the day, I ended up just having him rise out from behind the grave, like maybe he's coming up an elevator through a trap door on the stage or something, and then had him waddle across the screen. And since I already had the walk cycle planned out, all I had to, for one iteration, all I had to do was duplicate that over and over and over again and move him into the correct locations, which I believe there are tools in Blender to automatically move the location for him for each part of the walk cycle, but I don't know what those are and I didn't have time to learn. So I just manually did it, had him waddle across the stage, spent some time polishing, making the waddle look nice. Overall, I just duplicated the walk cycle that I already had done, across and across and across, and kept moving him into position. And at this point, I got to the point where he was gonna trip, so I started doing the poses for that. And animation is all about tweaking and sort of figuring out what works and what doesn't, but first things first, you obviously have to get like the right poses in place for the trip. But once I started getting those tripping poses in place, the graph interpolation was causing his foot to slide. So you really have to be able to be like a problem solver as an animator, because I couldn't manipulate the graph to get that to work. So instead, I just duplicated the frame where the foot stuck to the ground for the step one frame over, and then did the trip, and that fixed the interpolation issue to make him trip properly. At this point, I was showing some friends on Discord some stuff that I had made for OBS. It's important to take breaks, I suppose, and socialize. But here, I decided I didn't want any elements panning across the stage, so I built out the rest of the set. I put a grave in the very foreground just to add depth to the scene, and to kind of hide my my rushed animation job just a little bit. But here I wanted to add bats in front of the moon, so I made those out of Bezier curves as well. Just one for each wing and then one for the body. And then these were, I had some reference up on Google drawing that. I kept these really simple on purpose, and then I attached them to a string, and I used a driver on the rotation channel that referenced the vertical location of the string to manipulate the rotation of the wings. So all I had to do was move the string up and down, and then the wings would flap automatically. It made animating these so easy, since I literally only had to animate the string on each of them. And then I manipulated the equation a little bit on each of the bats just to offset and get the wings a little bit faster or a little bit slower for each of the bats. Here, I was just polishing things, tweaking things, making things look nice, moving things around. Added some overlapping action to the arms as well as he was walking and waddling down the way. But mostly just manipulating the graph editor to make everything look really nice and as good as I could for one night's worth of animation work. Here, I wanted starting soon text on the screen, so I attempted to put it on the tombstone, didn't like how that looked. Then I got distracted and decided to add some rolling fog, which I accomplished by having a volume, and I set the density to a noise texture here, but I needed it to loop. I needed it to loop if I animated it moving, so I faded between two noise textures that used two separate empties for object coordinates, so I could make it loop. Here, I started working on starting soon sign, but it was late at night, so I just opted to use Times New Roman for the text, tried to make it look as gothic and cemetery-y as possible. Then I had a ghost holding it, because originally the plan was to have starting soon text in like the lower left or lower right-hand corner of the starting soon screen, but it was already busy down there in those corners with lots of detail and stuff, so I decided to just put the ghost in the upper left where there was plenty of room left. And this is pretty much where we ended up. And that's that. I made some minor tweaks after I finished recording, but overall, I'm pretty happy with it. If I had more time, I would have loved to animate him actually crawling out of the grave, and the walk cycle could definitely use some polishing, but there's an important lesson in here about learning when to call things done. Anyway, if you want to come hang out and see this in action, I'm live at least every Friday at twitch.tv/oraclefishlive. And if you found this video interesting, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button below the video and ring the bell for new content every single week. Until next time, my name is Chris Folea. I'm your stream scholar. Class is out.